Jackie, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Talking Silkworm podcast.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it, David. And I love the name of the podcast. It's great.
Thank you. I will tell you the story of that name, but it will take me half the episode because it's a long story.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to have you on board today because you're a teacher and
Yes.
you're an expert in instructional design, and
Perfect.
you can help listeners better design or better structure content for their courses, because there is something that happens is that because we know something, or because we have expertise in an area, we think we can teach, and many times that's true, but that teaching requires structure in order to be effective.
Right. Exactly. It takes good curriculum to make great instruction, right? So you can't have one without the other. They can't be independent of each other. They have to go together. So it's funny because I work as an instructional designer. It's in higher education mainly. And I work in the curriculum design and development department at an it's an educational company. And so we provide educational services for one of the largest Christian universities. I'm okay with saying it. It's Grand Canyon University. So I help them with their curriculum. But then we also have K through 12 partners that we've worked with and we still work with. So we have a little bit of that blend of higher education and then K through 12, where we consult and sometimes help them with their curriculum. So it's exciting to see, our expertise being used in that way and helping the faculty and the teachers. They become subject matter experts. But you're right, they're experts in what they do, what they teach, but they may not always understand what goes on to make that curriculum. And once they're behind the scenes and they get to go through that process of helping to revise the curriculum or create the curriculum if it's a brand new course, then they have a greater appreciation and a greater understanding of it. So it's really great. And then for me, being an instructor too for Grand Canyon, I'm able to understand the other side of things. So it helps me to be a better instructor, be a better instructional designer. So it's really great because I get to see both sides of the coin, and not a lot of people get that. So I would encourage your listeners, if they ever have the opportunity to work on curriculum and be a subject matter expert, it may seem a little bit scary at first, but just do it. Just take the dive. The department I work for, we're there as a collaborative partner with them, and we help them along with that. And we make sure that we're meeting the institution's goals and what they have set forth. But then we also want to give some autonomy to that and give them the flexibility to be able to design the course, but not think of it as just their course, because it has to be. GCU is the type where it's a master course and then everything builds off of it. So some institutions are not like that. They allow each instructor to create their own syllabus, but GCU is different in that sense. And it provides consistency across different classes. And that way, one student doesn't go into one class and go, wait, my instructor is having me do this 10-page paper. And then another instructor's like, oh, well, you can just get up and talk for 5 minutes and then you'll get the same amount of points. Well, that's not equal, representation of that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would like to point out for those listening that, like, even Jackie, you just talked about how it works in formal education. All of the principles of instructional design transfer to what we will call non-formal or informal education. That includes, of course, online courses, or like these online products we offer that have an educational purpose. And something as
Right.
what you just mentioned, making sure there is consistency across the different products, yes, or the different courses, and inside the courses themselves is part of instructional design. I've said instructional design like 10 times, but first of all, I think listeners need to know what instructional design is. How would you define it?
Yeah, that's good. It's good to take a step back and understand what it is, because when people ask me what I do for a living and I tell them I'm an instructional designer, even in the educator space, I still get those confused looks sometimes. They're like, what is that? But especially outside of education, more people know what it is. But basically, it's as an instructional designer, I'm helping to ensure that we create the best learning experiences for the learners or for the students, whatever case it may be. Instructional design is where you're looking at models and theories. Now, as educators like yourself, David, you understand the different learning theories like cognitivism, constructivism. Those are you learn those when you go to school to become an educator. But what we do is we take it beyond that, and there's other models and theories that we utilize, like the ADDIE model, which is a process, a framework for creating educational content, and or for training, whatever the case may be. And then we also utilize other tools. You may be familiar with like backward design, cognitive load theory. So some of it's grounded in cognitive psychology, and then some of it was developed by educators to create better training and learning experiences. So it's really great. And what's nice about instructional design that some of your listeners may or may not know is that it was started in the military during World War II, by an individual who was an educator, and he wanted to be able to create training for the Army, for the military, and give them that on the job type of training to say, okay, we're going to give you this training so that you can go out in the battlefield and you can have what you need to not only survive, but to be able to work with each other and all of that, and be a good unit and a good team. So that's where it all started. And then they thought, oh, we need to take this model and utilize it in higher education, corporate, and all of that. So it's interesting. It's used in all industries. So it spans across a lot of different areas. So those that have been in education and teaching for a while, and they maybe are burned out, or they just want to explore instructional design and what it's about, I would encourage anyone to do that if they're looking to expand their horizons, or just look at improving what they're already doing. It's a great way to be able to do that, and kind of have that understanding of instructional design and how it ties into education as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up a little bit of the background and the history of the instructional design, because sometimes we have so many shiny objects that pop up on the internet, and it's like the new thing that everybody has to do in order to make their businesses succeed. But this is not one of those things. Like, there is
Right.
history in this. It applies to different settings, from education, corporate training. So it's not a shiny object.
Exactly. It's evidence based, which is great.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And
Yeah.
even with technology, like ed tech, and different things, like you said, those new things that come along, AI is one of them right now
Hmm.
that's taken every industry by storm, education and even instructional design. And I'm utilizing it every day in what I do. So on my own podcast, I have, as you know, I'm a fellow podcaster. So on my Designing with Love podcast, I would say probably every podcast episode that I've done with guests. I don't really do it on my individual solo ones, but mainly the guest ones. The topic of AI comes up all the time now. So it's a common thread, right? All throughout workplace training, corporate training, all of that education. So we're trying to navigate this, and it almost feels like that we're in an age of like the way it was with the internet in the late 90s. So it's like, okay, we're trying to navigate this new technology, and how does it fit in? But yeah, it's very interesting. To see how it'll evolve and how it'll change as the next couple years kind of go along, to see what happens. But yeah, exactly.
All right, but let's not go down the rabbit hole of
We don't go
AI.
there. Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah,
Because
we'll go with the tried and true frameworks,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
those evidence based frameworks. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
exactly.
think it's safer because okay, let's leave AI, because
Yeah,
it
it
changes, and a lot of that is foam. Like, it's gonna
right. We want to make
go
this
with the wind.
evergreen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going back to instructional design, there is a framework you work with. If
Yes.
framework is your correct name, that is the
Uh,
ADDIE model.
Yes,
or
it's
ADDIE?
one of some. Yeah, so ADDIE, the ADDIE model's been around since the 1960s. So it's acronym. So it's analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation. So it's a linear process. Some people have argued in this area in instructional design over the last 20 years or so that that ADDIE is too linear and that you can't do much with it. So every model has its benefits and drawbacks, but that's one of the critiques of ADDIE. So then Dr. Michael Allen, he invented the SAM model, which is successive approximation model, and it's a shorter iterative type of model. And it's good for those situations where you're doing a lot of collaboration and you need to have something that's iterative and more rapid development. Then they have the rapid development model too. So it's a lot of like iteration development. You're constantly going back to your subject matter experts, like, okay, I've got this design, how does this look? And then you iterate it and you work on it, and then you bring it back to them and say, okay, how does that look better? And then so before you do, especially with e-learning, it's very helpful for that and online learning, because then you can get all those iterations out and you can figure out, okay, now do you feel like this is where you want it before you go into your authoring tool and go and create it? Because I've had those instances before where I thought it was good and I thought it was ready to go. And my very first e-learning course I did for employee training, I had everything all built out. The SME was like, yes, everything looks great. I was like, all right, good. I'm going to go into my authoring tool now and build out everything. And I had software simulation built in. And then I gave it to her and I said, okay, take one last look at it before I go and have my learners test it out. And then I release it out and implement it. And she's like, oh, well, that doesn't look right. And that doesn't look right. Can you just take out those slides? And I was like, no, I'm going to have to redo the whole software simulation. That's going to take me a couple days to do that. So that's why iteration is so important. So I learned the hard way, right? Not to assume to make sure. So
Those
these
last.
models are great. Yeah, they're great for that because you can have a framework in place and you're not just seeing what sticks to the wall and okay, that's great, and then now let's move on. But you actually have a framework, and you can combine. Some people combine different models and theories once they know, okay, I'm familiar with the ADDIE model. Now I can kind of maybe combine a little bit of the different models like Dick and Carey and all these other ones. But I would encourage novice instructional designers or those that are just learning about it to probably look at one model like ADDIE that's a good framework. It's been around for a long time. Get familiar with that first. And then once you're familiar with it and you've done a few iterations of it and you're like, okay, maybe I can adjust this here or, but it all depends on the project you're working on too. No two projects are the same. So it's nice to have your toolbox. I call it my IDU toolbox.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think ADDIE, because I'm taking a look here at a graph that displays like how it is
Yes.
structured. Like in the graph I'm
Right.
looking at, it's not linear; it is like a circular thing. So there's
Yeah,
like a feedback
circular.
loop.
Yeah. So you can go back to like analysis at any time.
Hmm.
So the key is that you want to do analysis first. But what happens is in organizations and sometimes in educational institutions, if you're using ADDIE, they tend to want to jump right into design and they want to skip analysis. And it's like, well, that's really important to not skip analysis because you need to do a needs assessment and you need to do all these different things to determine is training or is what we're going to do, is it the best option or is it more something that needs to be policy that you need to enact in that. So the issue or the problem may not always be training as the solution.
Hmm.
So it's good to do that needs analysis. And then what happens is when you implement it, they want to skip evaluation. Not always, but they want to skip evaluation and be like, oh, we don't have time for that. And it's like, well, no, evaluation is important. You want to see, did what we create, did it work? And what do we need to shift? What do we need to change? What's working well? What isn't? Because then you can go back and you can make those changes that you need to make it the best it can be. So it's really funny how, and I hear that with my students a lot too when they work on projects. They're like, yeah, they want to skip this part. And I'm like, not good to skip. Those are there for a reason.
You just
Yeah.
touched one of the aspects I really like about this model. Okay, but first, before that, I think this is very good for a person who has no background in education and wants to like build or start building their own course.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in formal education, maybe in an informal setting. This is
Right.
very easy to follow through. Like all the steps are simple, and I like that there is an evaluation process, because outside of formal education, when you are selling courses online, particularly, or pre-recorded courses, evaluation is something that you usually leave out, both when it refers to evaluating the student, like making sure the student actually learned or achieved those learning outcomes. I'm getting like full nerdy teacher here, and the
Sure.
other aspect is like did they, like, internally, did I achieve what I wanted to achieve with the product.
Right.
um
Exactly.
Going back to the AI situation a little bit is, and I'm sure this is going to be this is already a trend. People are
Mm-hmm.
going to be so busy putting out a lot of content and potentially a lot of courses without going back and continually, constantly, consistently evaluating the performance of their course, if they help the student as they wanted or not, because there is maybe like that rush or that pressure to sell and sell and sell. So like the end goal of the product gets lost.
Right.
I'm just ranting here.
No,
Um,
you're on track. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. Yeah.
but
What you're saying is right.
that's why I would like to emphasize that the evaluation part is paramount. It is paramount,
Yes.
and it goes to, and I'm connecting like a lot of dots here with a lot of information I've consumed the past week, with the ethical side of it, right? Like you are
Right.
bringing your consumer value, and you gotta make sure that that value actually gets to the consumer. Yes, this is not putting things out there and getting the transaction done. Is also ensuring that the person achieves the outcome as much as it can be done, right? Because the other part is on the student themselves to actually execute on the
Right.
content.
Exactly. Right. And yeah, and helping them to understand there's value behind that course that they're taking. Because whether it's workplace training or it's higher education or K through 12, we want to take them on a journey, and we want them to feel like what they're consuming, right, or what they're completing is it's value. It adds value, and it's not just busy work or something where it's like, oh, I have to take this. I mean, there's some workplace training out there, compliance type training. I even have one that came in my inbox yesterday that I have to take, and I'm like, and every year we have annual compliance training. I'm sure even schools have it too, right? The pathogen training or something, right? So it's something you have to take. But I've been talking to some educators lately about how we can. I mean, the content's dry to begin with, so it's hard to really, do that. But there's creative ways we can make it a little bit more interesting, so it doesn't feel like it's the same thing year after year, and it's like, oh, I'm just clicking through this just to get through it, right? And they're not retaining. They're like, I've seen this before, but if there's ways that we can make it interesting. So it's been kind of good to talk to different individuals. Like, for example, I had on my podcast, I had Connie Malamed from the e-learning coach, and she's an instructional design expert and an expert in educational technology. So she gave me some really good ideas. Like, yeah, you can take this compliance training and put a scenario in there and put them in the spot of maybe someone else in the organization that has to deal with compliance. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then say, what would you do in this situation? Or how does this impact your position? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. I love that. Put them in the shoes of somebody else and have them think about that. And so I'm like, wow, that's really great. So you can do that with students too, and say, if you were to do this, what would be the outcome? Give them those learning paths, right? And see where it takes them, and if they choose this particular fork in the road, where's it going to take them, and what's the outcome? So it's really neat to be able to give them that autonomy and choice, even at a young age, to where they can see, oh, there's this is going to be the result if I take this path. So yeah. Yep.
Great. All right, Jackie, diving a little bit into the mechanics of implementing this model, uh, from the perspective. Okay, you and I are both teachers, so we know what it entails. But from a
Right.
perspective of a person who has never created a course before and they don't have a background in education, maybe they want to create a course for their team, or a course they want to sell because they have an area of expertise that they want to share.
Right.
What could be like a couple of key tips for this person in order to get started? I think one of them is going to be of use the ADDIE framework for
Right.
reference. But what would be like two tips for you to help the person know what steps to take, or what path to follow?
Right. I would say probably the first thing to do is to see who your target audience is, right? Who are you aiming to create the course for? And then once you have that, identify who they are. And during that analysis phase, I would say probably survey your learners, and it can be online surveying or it can be in person type of interviewing or focus group, something to where you're actually getting the pulse of those particular learners or students and trying to figure out where are the pain points, right? What are the areas where they're struggling, or where do they need more help, and how are you going to fulfill that need? So what is the way that you're going to do that, and then figure out through that, gather all that data, and then you can determine, okay, is it going to be in-person training? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be blended? Figure out what model or what method you're going to deliver that in, and then you can start to kind of build it out. And so through that analysis phase, you're trying to figure out, okay, who's my audience? What do they need? And how am I going to fulfill that? And then what's the way in which I'm going to deliver it? And then from there, you can start to build things out, and then you can move into development and start to really see where things work in the design. Or I'm sorry, design, not development. Design comes before development. But then you can start to design things out, and then that's where you start utilizing other models like Bloom's taxonomy for your objectives and all those other different things that come in there. And if you're teaching adults, you can reference adult learning theory. And so as you start to do that, you'll start to build in other frameworks that you can utilize along with ADDIE, and kind of and create that rich experience for them. And if you're using multimedia, you can use Mayer's 12 multimedia principles. So there's different tools out there and different frameworks that can really help enrich that for your learners and help you along the way to say, okay, I'm creating the best multimedia I can, and along with the course, and it's following best practices. So that's what I would say, is just start at the very beginning with your learners and involve them all throughout the process. So make sure that you're doing those touch points with them and those pulse, points where they feel involved in the process. Because if you involve them from the very beginning all the way through, then they're going to feel more invested, and then you're going to get buy-in from them, and you're going to have value added to your course. And it's not just going to sit in a catalog, right, and just collect dust. So it's going to have value for years to come as well. Yeah.
There is another aspect that I would like you to give us a little bit more details on, and
Sure.
it is dumping information.
Oh yes,
We
that's one. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen courses, quote unquote courses, which are just like a 2 hour long video, or a 6 hour long video, or a 40-minute long video, and that's it.
Oh
And that's just a video. I mean, that's an educational video, yes, but that is not a course. So, but a lot of
right.
people see that as courses, and those people who have no background in education, or who haven't created their first courses yet, might think that that's the best way or the right way to create a course. So, in terms of general structure, what should, let's keep it simple, what should a short, simple online course look like in terms of how the content is structured and distributed?
That's a great question, because when you talk about something like that, that's 4 hours long, it's going against cognitive load theory, which is it's a cognitive psychology theory. It's based on science, and it's that our working memory can only handle so much information. So if we do that, like you said, that content dump, where we're expecting them to take that and that's all we give them, they're not going to retain it. It's going to go in and out. They're not going to retain it. So I would say probably a good way to do it is to have uh, multiple ways for them to engage with the content. So you can start off with a case study or a story or something like that, and have them look at that, and then you start to scaffold it, right? We know this in teaching. Scaffolding is really important, but just and then along the way, you build in checks for understanding, and so you present them with a chunk of content. Break it up if you have to into modules or lessons where you're allowing them to get a little piece of that, and then do a quick check for understanding. It can be just one question if you want, and then it doesn't have to be worth anything, but just get that check for understanding and say, okay, are they understanding what they're doing? And that's your formative assessment, right? To do that, and then you just keep doing that along the way, and build in achievement levels too, and let them know, here's how far along you are, you're almost there, and just give them that encouragement along the way, because I think when learners know, okay, I'm getting to this through this, and I'm being successful, I think that helps them stay motivated. And so there's this one model too that's really good for adult learners. It's called the ARCS model. It's ARCS, and it's attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. So along the way, you're gaining their attention early on. So this is great for adult learners. Then you're giving them that relevance, like how is this relevant to me and my job, or in my career, or in my education? Then you're building up their confidence along the way, and you're saying, yes, you're doing great. Or if they didn't get something right, you give them that feedback and say, no, you didn't do that correctly, and here's why. Either give them another opportunity to go back and revisit the content, and then they take that again, or but at least give them that feedback, that clear feedback. And then the satisfaction is, by the end, they're satisfied with that, and they say, okay, great, now I've got this content, I learned it, now I can go into my career or whatever it is, or on the job, and I feel confident in what I can do, and I'm satisfied with how that went. So that's another model that's really helpful that you can use. So I would say multimedia is important, but don't overwhelm with multimedia. Don't put it in there because you want to create something that's flashy. Create something that's meaningful, and that's going to give them what they need to get to that next level and to achieve what you want them to achieve as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think a great deal of it is like doing things because we think they look nice, and not so much because they've
the eye candy. Someone told me that in the beginning. Eye candy.
We have all been guilty of it. It's just like a learning process, identifying what the eye candy is versus what the actual valuable thing is.
Right, exactly. An example of that is we were working on this sociology course years ago. This was before COVID happened. So we were working in the office, and I was working with one of my curriculum developers, because we have a team where we have a curriculum developer that works on the course, and then I come alongside them as the instructional designer, and I ensure alignment. And she had me come over to her desk. She's like, Jackie, you got to come over here and look at this. And I said, what's going on, Ruth? And she's like, look at what this subject matter expert sent me. She sent me her lecture slides to be put in the course. And when I looked at them, no two slide had the same color scheme. They were all different color scheme. She had overloaded each slide with too much text. And it was just like, wow, talk about she did not follow multimedia principles. She did not follow cognitive load theory. I'm like, and even she knew that, this curriculum developer, she's like, yeah. And she wants me to, and she had pictures that didn't relate to each other. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, and we went back to her and we asked the faculty, we're like, do you actually use this in your class? She goes, oh yes, I read it off on the slide. And we're like, oh my goodness. We're like, wow, talk about death by PowerPoint, right? I was like, wow. So, but it was funny because she had so many images in there and everything. The files kept crashing, the PowerPoint files. So we had to try to compress them down, and she wanted them in there. And we checked with the assistant dean, and he's like, yeah, put them in there. And we're like, okay, whatever you want. I mean, I gave my feedback. The curriculum developer gave her, take on it, and our expertise on best curriculum development, what curriculum should look like. But they ended up wanting it in the course. I think it only stayed in there a semester though, and then they took them out. So yeah, it was crazy. I'm like, this is a college professor, and wow, okay, yeah, it was an eye opener for me for sure.
I've embraced, or I am in peace with the fact that sometimes you try to help. Yeah, you try to protect clients from themselves, and they will let you. So you just let it happen, and okay, that's it is
Yeah.
what it is.
You're right. So I don't know if anybody can relate to that or if you've seen that before, but
I
yeah.
have,
Yeah.
I have. Okay. Um, Another aspect of courses, and this is more from formal education, but I think it's very important in informal education as well, is assessment.
Yes.
And we have a situation here, Jackie, with assessment, because I think that one-on-one assessment, or like the feedback you can provide as an instructor or as a tutor, is very important. But in the case where we are selling pre-recorded courses to a mass audience, that is not going to be possible, or is going to be unlikely, like to provide personalized feedback to each person. And a lot of the content sometimes, or the courses, are not like necessarily knowledge based, but they are more like project based, where people have to create something. So how can you integrate evaluation or assessment in a way that it can help the student improve like their learning process, and potentially give me as the creator some idea as to how their students are performing? That's a big question,
Oh,
by the way.
yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, especially with those pre-built courses, it can be a little bit harder. So I think if there's ways for the facilitator or instructor to somehow be involved with that process along the way and give them that personalized feedback, even if it's small. I mean, there could be opportunities for that, but try to see if there's a way that they can do that, because I think, and I've had some individuals on my podcast as well that have talked about the course creation process, and they talk about how some course creators, they want to just build it and then let it go, and they think they're going to be a millionaire, right? By doing that. So, but they always caution against that and say, well, you do need to have some involvement in some way in the learner's journey, because if you just create something and then just let it go out into the atmosphere and just say, okay, just have fun with it and do whatever you want, then there's no guidance or direction for them. So I think if there's some way that you can build in some assessment where you can be able to evaluate how well they're doing, even if it's small, I think it's really helpful to do that. So there's definitely ways I think you can do that depending upon the course. But yeah, I think that there's whether it's through a rubric, right, and you're grading through a rubric, or something where they have to show that they've mastered that content. I think that's really important to have that some measurement somehow, because then you're not going to have your quantitative data that you need to evaluate. Yeah, because if all you have at the end is a survey and say, how good was this course and what would you change, that's just your qualitative. You're missing your quantitative, and you're only getting half the picture, I think. And you're not getting the full picture of that if you're just getting qualitative survey data at the
Yeah,
end and you're not getting that quantitative. Yeah.
yeah. That makes me think. I think the idea of having a massive course that, like, you cannot like, where there is no interaction with the audience, it can backfire on you. I'm
Absolutely.
thinking both in
Yeah.
terms of like return on investment, because our listeners are business owners, but also as a teacher, and it has
Right.
to do with the with retention, both in the course, yes, because you want people to be engaged and to be active and to actually complete the course and achieve the learning outcomes, but you also want them to take other courses. So if you do not achieve that engagement, that retention, if you do not create that rapport by having those interactions with them inside your course, if you want them to purchase another course, it is unlikely that they are going to buy again when the previous one they didn't even complete it.
Exactly. Right. If they left it halfway through and said, you know what, this is too hard, or this is not engaging, I'm not enjoying this, they're going to quit. And, even if they paid $100 for that course, if it's not engaging and they don't feel like they're making progress, most of the time learners are going to leave that. They're not going to be motivated to complete it. And it's true. Then you've lost them as a learner, as a customer, and they won't come back to your catalog to take other courses. So yeah, it's important to build that relationship and be able to have those opportunities for them to engage with you as the facilitator or as the course creator, to have that engagement. Because now more than ever, we're realizing that we have generations that we need to account for. There's neurodivergent learners that we need to account for. One of the individuals on my podcast that was a guest, she said 1 in 5 learners are neurodivergent. They're entering the workforce now, and if we're not accounting for them, or as course creators, we don't account for those neurodivergent learners, we're losing out on a fifth of the people out there. So that's important. And then you've got, the Gen Alpha that's coming up. They're the ones that have been on screens all throughout their life. And so we have to account for them too. So knowing each generation and how they learn and how they go into the workforce is going to be different. So we have to account for those as well and understand that, okay, those that are coming into the workforce or those that are taking my courses are going to be from different generations, and I have to be able to account for their needs and understand who they are coming in. So that's important too.
I love that you mentioned the aspect of including neurodiverse students.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's I mean, like the word
That's a whole
neurodiverse.
topic in itself.
It's a small world. It's a small word, but it's a whole world, right? Because you have a huge spectrum. So, like us trying to cover how you can design your content in order to properly address this audience, like it will take us days to do that.
Right.
But
exactly.
Let's just leave it at you have to take it into account and articulate that with other efforts you make to create content for your business or for your academy or for your institutions. It's going to be important.
And just understanding who your audience is. And that goes back to the needs analysis and really, surveying them and meeting with them and understanding who they are and what their needs are and those pain points. And then you'll create a better course and a better product at the end, because then you've accounted for them. And it's not just something where you think, oh, I think they have to have this, or this is what my subject matter experts or are telling me. But yeah, if you're leaving them out of the process, it's hard, because stakeholders and businesses, they have their own metrics. They have things that they want to achieve, right? And they're like, okay, we want to achieve this percentage, or we want to be able to have this outcome. But yeah, if we leave learners out of that equation, then we're missing so much, I think. And so that's something I always remind those that I work with. I'm like, at the end of the faculty need to have what they need to have, or the facilitator. But at the end of the day, it's student-centered or learner-centered. It needs to be that. So one thing I would encourage too is start with like a human-centered approach and think about what's the whole entire system, systems that need to play into it. So not only the students and the stakeholders, but the systems and things like that. What are all the touch points of that? And then you drill down to like learner-centered and then go, okay, now what does the learner need? And so you're starting with broad and then you're going into that. So I would encourage, your listeners to look up human-centered design and learner-centered design, because those are really good elements to have and to understand too, because then you can do that and kind of understand that. I have a graphic that I created that has like the two and the differences of that. So if you want me to share any resources, just let me know. I've got some interactive resources that are available, that if any of those help your listeners, I can share those, and you can pop those in the show notes too. So
that'll be great.
I've got everything from adult learning theory. I've got all the models and theories. I did a whole series of solo podcast episodes on my podcast, and it has everything from adult learning theory to 4CID model. So if there's anything that pops out, just let me know, because I've got interactive content for all of those as well.
Okay, that means we need to link. We are going to link your podcast in the show notes for sure. So for those listeners who are interested in learning more, they should go check it out.
Yes,
I have the final question, which is part of the things we mentioned before, and that is AI. And I will like, okay, AI. Everybody speaks about it, but I would like to bring up the subject, which is not so widely spoken about, of ethics.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're speaking about human centered learning and learner centered design. Yeah. Yep. But what about like human produced content of like, so you can build that connection? What's happening right now? And I'm gonna go a little bit off rail here of the tracks, but there is a point I want to make on YouTube, for example. Right now, there are channels that are putting out dozens of videos a week that are generated with artificial intelligence. So, like, they are just
Mm,
content machines,
right,
soulless content machines. How are they doing this? They are getting the content, they're predating the content from successful channels. They're having AI reconstruct or rephrase the whole script of those videos, successful videos, and then that reconstructed script, they put it into like a voice machine. Yes, like it can be 11 Labs or any of these tools. I use some of
right,
them, but then it
hmm
comes to how you use them, what the ethical part of it.
right,
And then another AI adds images related to the voice. So like there is no human there. Like they use another person's content. An AI rephrases that content. Another one creates the voice. Another one adds the images. And that way, you are using another person's creativity to build a business, and it works because these channels have millions of followers, and they're making a lot of money by by
mm,
by predating all the other content creators'
right.
content. So I'm sure something similar is going to happen, or is already happening with course creation.
I'm sure.
I,
Yeah,
I,
I'm
I
sure
would
it's
like
out
to,
there.
yeah, I would like to hear your take on when, like, where's the line? Where do we draw the line? What is appropriate? What is not appropriate when it comes to including AI in course design, course creation?
Yes, I think, well, one thing that we have in our organization and also at GCU is it's called the first draft principle. So, what we do is we can utilize AI to get the initial ideas where we can take something that either exists or and then we ask AI, hey, can you give me some ideas? Like, for example, this is a great example. So, we have a course description for a course and it's existing, but we're revising that course to better meet what's in the industry. So we take that course description, sometimes the topics that exist, and we put it into our own internal AI model. And we say, hey, how does this look? And we have AI evaluate that. Or we have a brand new course. And we say, hey, I have this course description. Can you generate 8 topics that you think would be good that would fit with that course description? But then we don't use that content right out of the gate. We just use it as a framework, give it to the subject matter experts and say, okay, here's what AI came up with. We're always clear that this is what AI came up with, but please massage it, revise it. And so that's what we end up doing. And then the final product is actually that human loop where it's the AI and the human looking at it and saying, okay, no, that's not quite right. So because we know AI can hallucinate and it can be inaccurate with information. So if we take humans out of it and then we're taking stuff that's already, like you said, that's already curated and out there, yeah, that's ethical, unethical. It violates copyright and everything. So yeah, that's, I would say, use something like that where it's AI is a first draft principle, or you're having it check to see, do things align and do things look okay? Am I on the right track? So using it as an assistant instead of replacing us, I think is the key right there. That it can help enhance what we're doing, but it will never replace what we can do because we're going to be the ones that are going to check it. So yeah, I would say, a good example of that is I was actually having Chat GPT. I was having it help me with a couple of outlines for some of my solo episodes. And I asked it to, I was doing one on Mayer's 12 multimedia principles and Merrill's first principles of instruction. So I asked ChatGPT, I was like, hey, can you help me with an outline for the Merrill's First Principles of Instruction? And I had previously done one in the same chat for mayors. Well, what AI did, ChatGPT actually started melding the two together, and it started putting the Merrill's First Principles with the mayors. It got the two mixed up. And because AI, I guess, didn't realize that it hallucinated and it didn't know the difference between the two, or it just got them. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's putting in Merrill's, it's putting coherence principle. Coherence principle is not part of Merrill's First Principles. That's part of Mayer's. So then I realized, oh, I see. It's convoluting the two. It's getting them mixed up because Mayer and Merrill are very similar, right? In some ways, in the way they sound, Merrill and Mayer. So I figured that's what happened, is that ChatGPT got them mixed up somehow. So that's why we need to get involved in the process. So yeah, so I would recommend first draft principle every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't let the ROI, the rush for ROI, cloud your side and your vision of your project, which is what's going on right now, sadly.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Jackie, it's been great to hear you today. I am always happy, as I was saying before we hit record. I'm always happy to have other nerdy people like myself on the show, because I like to pick their brains and learn from them, and also nerd out a bit myself.
Sure. Yeah, I love it. Me too. It's always great to connect with other educators. Yeah.
If listeners out there want to learn more about course design, because I know this is a very, very wide area of knowledge, but it's very useful. It doesn't apply only if you're an educator. It applies if you're a business owner as well, because you have to do training. You can sell courses. There are so many things you can do with it.
Right.
And even for content creation, because content creation, if you have a YouTube video, if you have a podcast, that's still a form of education. So instructional design does apply to content creation. If they want to learn more, where can we find you? What's the name of your podcast? Tell us everything about that.
Sure. Yeah. The name of my podcast is Designing with Love. And so I'm on all major platforms like you are, Apple, Spotify, all of that. My website is Designing with Love blog. So I kept the name. I had it as a blog site, and then I converted it over, and I'm using Podpage now for my site, which is nice because then it automates a lot of that. So they can find me on Designing with Love blog. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if they want to connect with me professionally, they can do that as well. Just search for my name on LinkedIn, and it keeps growing my connection. So I'm always happy to connect with other professionals, other educators, and even have chats with them too. And maybe do some consulting. I've done consulting in the past, so I'm always happy to come alongside people and teams to help them create the best learning they can and the best content.
Great. So for all those listening, the links to Jackie's podcast, to her LinkedIn, and to her website are going to be there in the episode description, in the show notes, for you to go follow her, get in contact with her, listen to what she shares on her show. I'm sure you're going to find it very, very valuable. I just sent you that connect invitation on LinkedIn, by the way, Jackie. So looking forward to continuing communication. And
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for being our guest today.
I love it. Thank you, David. I look forward to maybe coming back and, digging in a little deeper on some other areas. I'd love to do that.